Test, test. All right, well, we're streaming now. I believe the audio is working. Okay, so this is the first time I've streamed in a while. I did a couple of debates back in like 2020, but it was nothing to write home about. Oh, that's kind of cool. They've integrated chat into the OBS software. I don't really have a particular topic to talk about. This is mostly just me trying to get it done. I'm a strong believer in, a lot of times you can get into analysis paralysis. You spend so much time trying to think about what your channel is going to be about or what you're going to do. You spend all your time planning. But the reality is you just have to get your feet wet because there's really no substitute for knowing what it actually feels like to do the thing that you want to do. Of course, some planning takes precedence. Like I purchased this microphone. I have a nice webcam. If I'm going to be serious about this, I'm going to have much better lighting. I'm going to have a nice DSLR camera like a Sony Alpha. But for now, this suffices just to get something done. This is the first stream in a while. This channel was originally called Boca Code and Coffee because I used to live in Boca Raton, and there wasn't really a big community down there. Not a lot of people who were on the cutting edge of technology. Just a lot of mediocre professionals just looking to get some guidance, some socializing. I used to work in Silicon Valley. It was okay. It was a lot of posers. There was a lot of people that were, look at me. I work in Silicon Valley. I put together slide decks. I'm so important. And they were posers. They didn't know anything about tech. That they weren't interested in tech. They just wanted to feel like they were up on the social ladder. Still so many people like that. Event coordinator. That's my favorite one. I coordinate events. I coordinate events for big companies. I'm important. Yeah, you're a secretary, right? You basically have no skills other than you can speak English and you're not a complete drooling idiot. So, no, in terms of what we'll talk about on this channel, we'll cover a number of things like I'm personally a huge fan of Scala, and I've been studying it for about a year now. Notably because, like, the way that I see programming is it's really two worlds. There's the low-level programming. It's like C, C++, assembly, unfortunately Rust. And those people deal with mutatable state because they have to, right? That's how computers work. You have your CPU, your caches, your memory, and it's all about mutating state. So naturally, the abstractions that they wrote to handle that are abstractions that help you mutate state. There's no getting out of that. And that field is pretty well established, right? If you want to write a microcontroller, you know what to do. You know where to look for the libraries. If you want to program an operating system, people have been doing that for a while. So that's a pretty well established field. The place where there's a lot more ambiguity and, in my opinion, opportunity is in the software engineering space. And while people think it's oversaturated, I would completely disagree. The reality is that tech is saturated with low IQ people, is essentially what it is. And they're not imaginative. They're not really solving problems. Occasionally you get a genius that comes along and invents a new language, right? Like Martin Ordersky with Scala, or Strauss Strupp with C++, but those people are so incredibly rare. Incredibly rare. And over the last 10 years, so like a little bit about me, I do data engineering specifically. I do you got a lot of big data over here. You want to do some sort of aggregation and then put that big data over here. And you would be amazed at how complicated that is because dealing with data at scale requires a lot of intellectual rigor. And in fact, it's actually not that complicated. You can get most of this done with something like Apache Spark. But the complicated part is dealing with people, corporations, systems, understanding how they already do things, what things in production already depend on already existing pipelines, and how do you fix that without breaking production? That is where most of the job goes. But in terms of actually solving this problem, so once Scala was invented, it seems like not overnight, but over a few years, they invented some of the bleeding edge frameworks for doing data computation, and nobody's ever come close since. You know, name a program that does what Apache Kafka does better. Flink, Spark, you know, these, well, Flink is, I think, it's with Java, but still. Um, the point being is that functional programming, regardless if you hate it or love it, has become an important part of data processing because it is a good way to abstract data transformations. And there's good reason for that. It's because you want to describe what to do, not how to do it. How to do it requires you to write state manipulate. You have to do state mutations to describe how to do something. But instead, if you describe what to do, well, you don't describe state mutation in that case. You describe the function, like what is going to. You take all the state mutation and you put it in a library, and you can call the library. That is the essence of functional programming. I'm sure there's more to it, but and this is a good abstractions for software. It just is, because when you're trying to define the flow of the screen needs to render the chat, but it also needs to show the video. But before the video is rendered, it has to apply these effects, and these effects have to take the video input, but they have to be done in the right order. Otherwise, something doesn't get layered properly. This is all a series of data transformations. And then how it gets displayed on the screen, data transformation. And one of the reasons why software is so pigeonholed, why it's not really getting much better, is there really are no good abstractions, at least for UI, that have these entire functional pipelines. Now, in data engineering, this problem is solved. If you want to take 4 CSV files, a Parquet file, an ORC file, some JSON streams, and you also want to write a Python script that will run every 5 seconds to pull data down from an API, and you want to join this data together like you would in SQL and do some sort of aggregation and then dump it somewhere every 5 minutes, you can do that with Apache Spark. Easy peasy. It's really easy. But if you want to make a UI like OBS, you have to be an expert in everything. You have to understand, you know, you're going to make a desktop app. Well, have fun deciding between DirectX 12 and you know, you're either going to choose one of these desktop frameworks like Qt, or you're going to have to write something from scratch. And if that's the case, you're going to have to figure out DirectX 12 or, you know, like GTK, or you have to learn Metals if you're going to write it for Mac, right? Everything's operating system dependent, because to render pixels on a screen, you have to work with the operating system to actually do that, which is a huge pain in the ass. Where was I going with that? Oh, yeah. So there isn't really a good functional framework for doing this. And you'll notice that, like, yes, web browsers have really taken over the industry, and that's because they are a generally universal format now. Like, you can run web browsers in Solaris, Linux, Windows, Mac. It doesn't really matter. They all have implementations of Apache, or not Apache, of Mozilla Firefox. But, you know, HTML has a lot of problems. It's not really well typed. It's not. What's the? I can't believe I'm forgetting this. Because I don't use it very often. It's the standard format for SOAP APIs. It's HTML, but it's very strongly typed. Anyway, so HTML is not very well typed. JavaScript is a loosey-goosey dynamic language that really doesn't make a lot of sense and has really stupid gotchas. You know, I've seen, like, you say like the string 0 or the string 0 or the number 0, and it gives you something that's totally nonsense. Terrible language. But I don't know that it's really fair to blame JavaScript entirely, right? Like, getting a language that would run on the browser, you really had to write a new language. And I don't know that something like Python would have been good for that. What were the options of these? Java? I mean, I think they tried that, Java applets, right? And sure, maybe it would have been better, but it still wouldn't have been perfect. It's really difficult to come up with abstractions. So I guess I'm losing my steam here. The whole point of the stream was just to get something out into the air. I didn't have a prepared script. I don't really have a prepared topic. I'm just kind of shooting the shit. But yeah, software engineering is annoying. The industry is really difficult to get into right now. You know, as a senior, it's very easy to get jobs. I get recruiters messaging me on LinkedIn, on sending me text messages, sending me emails every single day. And yet one of my friends who I trained in data engineering, he can't get anything, despite the fact that he has graduate experience with Apache Spark, still can't get anything. They're looking for people that have like 12 years experience, and that's it. They won't settle because everybody has this brilliant imagination that AI is going to replace junior devs, which is a totally absurd thing to say, by the way. Here's a fun fact. If you tell ChatGPT to come up with a non-trivial word game, turn-based, and then you ask it to play 5 rounds with you, it will forget it's playing a game in like the first or second try. And the reason being is that ChatGPT is like a functional convolution of a bunch of the entire history of text in that chat with a bunch of random templates. That's all AI really is. It's just random templates, right? Like programming languages are already an abstraction. They're already an English abstraction on top of binary to program computers. Any kind of further abstraction on top of the language is going to not specify all the little bits and pieces that the language was designed to specify. So what's it going to fill it with? Random stuff. And we already have a process for doing this. It's called writing libraries, right? How is AI going to be better than building a library for this? In fact, they don't really have measurements for this. They don't really have metrics for this. How many hours, right? What is considering how much money was spent to train ChatGPT or Cursor, whatever your stupid model is, considering how much money it costs to train those things and how much hype had to go into it, how many graphics cards you had to train, what is the marginal benefit over something like pip install Django? Pip install fast API. How much time imagine if those frameworks didn't exist, what would people be doing today? Oh, I had to write my own web framework, but I did it with ChatGPT, so ChatGPT is worth $1.5 trillion. Is Actix and Rust worth $1.5 trillion? Because it seems like if you use ChatGPT to write that, suddenly it's worth $1.5 trillion. The economy is totally fake. It's totally fake, which is why, like, if you ever want to get something done, don't follow the rules. The rules are not there to help you, to keep you safe, to guide you. The rules are there. They were put there by the people who didn't have any rules and got to the top. And they said to themselves, well, we need rules now to enforce our position, to keep the rest of the people out. That's what rules are there for. So, if you wanna see something happen in the world and you come up against the rules and the rules tell you no, you have to find a way around the rules. You don't give up and say to yourself, oh, well, there must be a good reason why I'm not allowed to do this. Says who? The people who wrote the rules? Who are they? Unless they've like really accomplished something, unless they're giving you advice, right? Unless it's someone who's like written the programming language you're writing in and they say, well, you probably shouldn't use it for this, right? That's not a rule, but I'm suggesting that we didn't really design, we didn't really design Python to be a high performance language. If you want like millisecond response times, then you should probably use Golang. That's not the same thing. But yeah, so like ChatGPT, it's all so stupid. It's not replacing developers. Everybody knows what's going. I can't talk about it on YouTube, but everybody knows what's going on with the tech industry. I don't have to say anything. It's not ChatGPT. I have not seen a single person lose their job to AI. Not a single person. And in fact, I personally don't use AI. And I review a lot of pull requests from other senior engineers that use AI, and their code is garbage. And I have to correct and fix a ton of stuff. Like, for example, one time somebody wanted to write an Airflow DAG, and they wanted to have some sort of configuration that they could then pass to their operator. But instead of just defining a big JSON blob or writing a data class, it extended the configuration class for Airflow itself. That is not the right thing to do. And this person knew Airflow. Like, they had no excuse. I don't think they even looked at their code, right? And again, this is the lie. They say, well, ChatGPT is there so that it'll speed up your development process. In what way? You don't look at the code it writes. You only look at the output. Well, does it test all possible use cases, right? Does it also write the tests? How do you know the tests are passing? Do you even know what the tests are? Do you know what's in those tests? It's just totally absurd. What you spend most of your time doing as a programmer is not programming. It's communicating. It's talking to business, stakeholders, people who are going to consume the thing it's capturing the spec. It's understanding what already exists. It's understanding the systems. It's understanding every morning you replicate the database and then you transform it into a data warehouse. And then you have a bunch of people like customers that you deliver the data to, right? Maybe you're a electronic health records company, and the doctors want extracts of their data. And you have to deliver that either via Parquet files or CSV or as an API endpoint. That's a system. And that data has to be processed every day. Not everything can be done in a real-time stream, right? If your database is a ACID transactional database type application with CRUD operations, you can't always do everything with real-time streams. So that being the case, well, what if the data is really large? What if it's a legacy report? What if basically every single one of your customers depends on this legacy report that's massive and takes 3 hours to run every morning? How do you fix that problem over time? How do you reinvent the analytics so that how do you incentivize people to move to this new real-time system that you set up that doesn't have all the pieces that they were using in the old legacy report? Like, these are the things that you solve as a programmer, as a senior programmer, right? When you're a junior, you don't really know how things work. You don't understand. You haven't mastered the low-level stuff, so you can't think in systems. You can't from the top down say, well, we'll do this here and that there. And I guess those are the skills that people are hiring. But you know what it really is all of tech in general was just bloated. The industry was flush with cheap investment money because the interest rates were basically nothing. And everybody wanted to be the new Google, and everything was becoming digitized. Now everything is digitized, and money isn't cheap anymore. And all the VC money is dried up. And then on top of that, they're replacing, I have to be careful how I talk about this, but they're replacing all of the domestic labor with foreign labor to make it cheaper, because software engineers are paid very well. And the people that they can't replace like that, luckily I get to make a decent salary. But so AI is it's so fake. It's fake, and it's very frustrating listening to people talk about that, because I remember about 7 months ago, it was all the rage. The company was purchasing licenses for Cursor, and they were holding competitions to see who could do the most AI. I never use AI. What would be more useful than AI? Like, if you're doing work that is so low IQ that you can use AI, right? Like, you are writing functional components for a web browser, for a web app. You know what works a lot better than AI? Snippets. Like, this is already a feature in VS Code. You want to have all the code written out for a functional component, and you want to have maybe like subgenres. Oh, well, this is a functional component for a notification versus a functional component for an item in a list that needs to have a status or like a count state. You can make all these things as snippets. You can make templated snippets. How is that any different? You know what the difference between that and ChatGPT is? The snippet's going to be correct 100% of the time. And if you can't find the right one, it's your fault. With ChatGPT, I mean, yeah, ChatGPT, it could write anything. You really have no clue what it'll do. You don't know how it'll fill in the data you didn't specify. You don't know if it's going to pull the right template. And that's really a shame. Like these machine learning models, they are actually really good for some things. So the world's best fuzzy finders. You know, you go to search for a video on YouTube, you got to give YouTube some leeway. If you search the word hamster or you search like building a house, how do you rank all those videos? How do you, first of all, how do you even do that efficiently? And then second, how do you do it in a way that encourages people to watch the video? Because there could be a bajillion, like, look at this. This is a first time stream from somebody who hasn't done it in like 5 years, who isn't famous, literally just started, no followers. And then meanwhile, you have, I'm sure there's a million people like me, a million people who want to get into streaming who are not famous. How do you search through all their videos and then rank the one that is most likely to, people are most likely to click on, and if there's an ad, they'll watch the ad, but then continue to watch the video? How do you rank them? That's a hard problem because it all started with a text search. So ChatGPT is very good at that. You know, you want to search a ream of. I know that it was controversial. They had ChatGPT writing legal contracts, which is not a good idea. But in terms of searching legal contracts, searching law, there is no better tool. That is what that tool is meant for. It is the world's best fuzzy finder. You will never find a better finder. You can't use Levenstein distance. You can't do exact text search. Nothing will compare. But people misappropriate it. And it's so sad, like, because AI, it's really just machine learning, and machine learning is just statistics. And there's so many impressive applications. Like, for example, cell phones, the camera in the iPhone, that uses AI. It's machine learning. That was probably the most profitable, most successful application of machine learning ever, was ML optimized images from the 3 cameras on the front. That's all machine learning. Nobody freaked out and said it was the future, that AI cameras are going to replace photographers when that happened. Instead, photographers just use iPhones. I mean, I'm sure some photographers lost their job, but it's the same thing. But that was genuinely useful, genuinely impressive. And then if you've ever seen Comma AI, what they are is they're the company that they make like basically a cell phone that you mount to your car, and it plugs into the service jack on the bottom left by your steering wheel. And through reverse engineering, it uses binary calls to control the automated like radar detection in your car, the cruise control. It takes over the cruise control. And most cars today have motors in their steering wheel to help with lane assist. And they have radar detection on the front of the car. So it just plugs into that and it can drive your car for you. You know, I don't know how they've advanced. I don't think they can stop for stop signs, and it's more like Tesla autopilot. It's autopilot. It's not a driver. It's not an automated, it's not like the Google self-driving cars, but it's great for the highway. But that's all machine learning. OpenPilot, that's the software that runs on those devices. Fantastic software, incredible application of machine learning. But nobody talks about that. Everyone is obsessed with the fact that they can ask some stupid chatbot to write a poem, and it's marginally better than what we had with AOL chatbots back in 1998. So it's very stupid. I look forward to AI going away. Well, I think I'm going to end this. I don't think anybody ever joined this, which is good. That would be embarrassing. I don't want to have a small audience of people thinking to themselves, why did I bother clicking on this video? So we're going to end this.